now
drop
it's
in the bucket compared to
$700,000.
that, yes.
And the need statewide for library capital projects is huge. It's hundreds and hundreds of millions out there, and there are libraries that can show a lot of need. So it's
What
very,
about
very.
keeping the new building green, things of that nature? Is there anything?
There is money, there is still some money around for green initiatives, but it's not,
Enough.
generally it's enough to offset some of the added costs that you incur. There is a capital investment in some of these things, once you get to a certain level, and that'll offset the fees and the administrations and all that stuff on that, but it's generally not gonna pay for the whole, like, you can get a grant for solar power, but it's not gonna pay the cost of all the solar panels. It's gonna pay the engineering fees and all that stuff required to put them in, but you still have to pay the capital cost typically.
So getting back to our plans from the Greenfield site, we showed a couple of options. Any opinions about those options, one way or the other? Two orientations that we had shown.
You know, I'm wondering about that and wondering how much difference it really makes, again, because we are behind things, and we're not facing the main road. You know, we in essence become the draw for Wood Farm Road to be used. There's not a whole lot of natural traffic on it right now.
That's right.
And it's right in,
What's gonna go in the.
right in, and
Yeah.
right out on that.
Yes.
Coming out on there.
Yes.
Exactly.
Who's gonna be your, who's gonna be your neighbor?
Who's gonna be your neighbor?
Yeah.
Who's gonna be your neighbor?
Right.
I mean, it has that traditional business block just south of us, but that's completely unknown at this point, so who are we really
Really,
partnering
and I
with?
really don't like that about this site,
There.
that we don't know who's going in the part that's already developed and who's going to be there later, especially considering the stuff that we are already squeezed between. And I don't know, it's an unknown that I don't care for in this site. I like the site space,
Yes.
but that's about the only thing I really have
Well, and Eric,
strongly
can you
feeling
say
for.
that area directly south of us is the one where the water is potentially more of an issue?
That's what Don
That's
was
what-
told on the phone.
That's
So-
what the engineer.
Who knows who's going to really be attracted to that spot for business development?
No, I think it's gonna be a problem.
Yeah.
I think there's probably some reasons that this site was made available for the library.
That was very
diplomatic. Overall, looking at single facility options, getting to a site of enough size to make it worth the library's while to move out of the downtown, while keeping it centrally located within our library district, you don't get a lot of options.
Right.
No.
And some of those options are much, much costlier than others, read anywhere adjacent to Route 59.
Right.
Also true, right.
Well, and
Bill, is that
Well, I'll tell you.
general
I'm sitting
characterization
here-
as commercial realtor?
Yeah, I just told you that. If the library was put on this green, on Wood Farm Road, by the wastewater treatment plant, and I'd sit down, I'd probably talk an hour about the pros and cons, for sure, and I'd be glad to. My property value across the river will increase with that library and that site. From a business aspect, this, and I'm not talking about commissions, by the way, this makes more sense to the community and its perception also. And now, here's your obstacle. The village, I would think, would rather have you on Wood Farm Road. That's just what I see. Maybe I'm wrong. In one way or the other, because they kind of look bad for buying that piece. And there is floodplain there, by the way, too. It might affect you. To keep something like this institution in the center also is real good. And hopefully the city can see that part of it more than the other. But that's an obstacle, because they can cut your head right off before you even get the door, depending on how they feel. And we know politics. So that's it.
On the other hand, in light of the fact that I think the library is also very important to Main Street,
Certainly is.
and I don't mean Main Street literally, but place in which we have all of our businesses, our restaurants, the people who come as, you know, as tourists to help to pay taxes for us. I don't know that really it would be a good idea for our library to leave, because we have a lot of traffic that is a part of coming to the library. Families. I mean, I think that's one of the reasons that we have so many families that participate in activities and events. So we're also a generator of commerce. And to put us out there would really do nothing from a commercial aspect.
Aurora did that, or Montgomery, it's in Montgomery. If you talk to them about their library.
Oh, the
Oswego.
Oswego, the Oswego
I guess
Library
it's called
Montgomery
Oswego.
branch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's that happening there? Is there enough traffic to, does anybody talk to them?
Land given to them.
What's the feeling?
That land was a donation with a developer through their village, and the remainder of that development did not happen. So they're kind of
Yet, I'm
off.
sure.
Yeah, they're off the beaten path at the moment. It's a very, very different situation though, because they are a two-community library district, and their Montgomery area was underserved because their one facility was in downtown Oswego. And so
Which they're
they
expanding.
were, yes, so when they put the Montgomery branch there, it was automatically going to get traffic because they were already underserved in that area. But when time came to expand further and more demand, even though that's the larger site, they're adding on to the Oswego Library.
They squeezed it in there, didn't they?
Yeah.
Took it
But
apart.
I think also, it sounds like that when they put in the Montgomery branch, even though they were the first ones there, they knew who their neighbors were supposed to be, right? They knew what was gonna happen around them, even though it hasn't yet. Okay, you know, at least they knew, and I think that, you know, in a way, that's one of the differentiating factors, I think, with your situation, is that uncertainty.
Well, perception in terms of what the library represents for the community is very different based on the two sites.
Yeah.
And I believe that the library, of course, I've been committed to that belief for a long time, but that it truly is the heart of the community today. It is the one place in which everyone feels welcome, no matter whether it's age, stage, wealth, or lack thereof, whether they can speak English or not, whatever there is, that is where the library comes in. And there is no other place in which we can say that, I think, that people come to connect, to feel welcome, comfortable, communicate, meet.
So let me ask a question about staying on this side.
Yeah, she's
you know,
exploding
raising-
the reason for her hand.
You know, raising a challenge, you know, with staying on this site. We've talked about the parking tonight. None of the schemes we've shown you meet the parking requirements according to the zoning ordinance. How big of an issue is this likely to be going forward?
And that's one of the reasons that we are having a citizens task force that includes key stakeholders from around the community, including village staff, village board members, to participate in the process of developing concepts, hopefully to make sure that we are getting their buy-in on direction, and also the public meeting aspect to make sure that we're testing all of our understanding about what the community's opinion is on the different concepts as we move through the process.
And perhaps as a little precursor to that, as we've had some public comments, is there anything additional?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt the normal flow of things, but just a couple of things. One is I think that water table or whatever side, at the Greenfield site, I actually think train proximity, even though it's just the spur, is a bigger issue than maybe you're thinking about there. As many people know, we have tremendous problems with the train, more on the main line, which isn't that far away from Greenfield side either, but even the spur, I think it'll interfere with things like green space use and just general kind of grubbiness and stuff. So I think that might be something to keep in mind. And also in terms of parking and where people are going to build and where parking's expanding, one of the things I think that goes on in the background here in Plainfield, and it's not a bad thing per se, but Pace is looking for a lot for the park and ride thing. And, you know, your fear is going to be that wherever you go and you expand your lot, I know we share this lot with the village proper, maybe out there they're going to want to expand some of that land into another lot for Pace if they get them. You might find a lot of that park and ride activity going on in the Greenfield
They
area.
just didn't want that property, by the way.
Oh, they did not? Okay,
Yeah.
two, okay, thank you.
Because it's across the train.
It's on the other side of train tracks, they don't like.
Oh, and they don't like
they
that.
don't- yeah.
In order to get to
But that's a whole,
55.
Okay.
that's a whole nother.
Oh, okay. And then I actually would agree with Pat and with what I think some other people are saying. I don't know, certainly as time goes by and people watch, they may change their minds. But I think you're going to have a harder time with general public acceptance of getting a new piece of property that's semi-isolated feeling and maybe for many years than you're going to be with continuing to be a sort of a central icon of the community of Plainfield. I just think you're going to get more blowback on the, well, why are you going to go over there when you should be over here? And I think people will even picture that, whether it's fair or not, they'll picture that as almost being greedy or throwing away money. New always says to people, you know, something else isn't good enough for you, I think. I've seen that problem before with the other referenda, so.
Add anything? You don't have to.
Well, I just wanted to mention, I'm not really very knowledgeable about zoning, but I did read last night online that the village is revisiting building code or zoning code for churches in the area because of a concern about safety pulling in and out of these facilities. And I was just wondering, we had mentioned that there would be an entrance from Route 59, which is already congested and too small. Would this be a zoning issue perhaps, or a safety issue for even having road access to 59? Because if the building is going to be much larger, we're going to expect increased activity here, increased use. So there might be increased traffic.
But we do have that access now.
We already have it now, and I think part of the issue with the churches is that it is that one time a week concentrated Sunday morning traffic issue.
Okay.
And I think we would have it more spread out throughout the course of the
We'd
day and
always
the
be
week.
congested.
Yeah.
But
Right,
that,
yeah.
that street will be an IDOT street, and we'll have to work with them as how far off the
Yeah.
corners and
Sure.
driveways are, things like that, all have to be sorted
There'll
out.
there'll
And
be
it will-
input from their side as
They
far
kinda
as how
give-
that works. So, you know, one of the ways you address an issue like that on a road like that is you have just a right in and right out, right turn in
Which
and
is
right
the way
turn
it is
out.
now.
Yeah.
Okay.
So. that
Well, I
you're
was
not
just,
having
I
a
was
cluster.
mentioning, because
Yeah.
we're gonna probably have more usage of the library, hopefully if it's
Yep.
3 times or 4 times larger. And I thought maybe the traffic might be even too much as opposed to what it is now, because I don't really notice anybody using, I walk here. But I mean, again, I'm sure people do pull off of 59. I probably would be a little concerned about doing that because there's so much congestion there.
The right out is really pretty easy.
Okay, so just a right out, so no one coming south would be able to turn into
No,
it.
No,
generally
and
you turn
already
at the street
that's-
before and come in
Okay.
behind on Illinois.
All right,
well, I
I think
guess
a lot of
that's
people
fine.
are
I
just
mean,
used to that.
Conceivably, you could have 4 curb cuts,
Yes.
even though they're residential, doesn't really matter.
Yes.
They're multifamily.
And IDOT may expand 59 further, so you're going to end up with some sort of, like, what if they expand it out to give you another lane there, even to get a turn lane off of 59? At some point, if that lot's valuable enough, you may actually lose footage if 59 expands, right?
Well, there already is a turn lane there.
But a turn lane for this lot specifically?
Oh, no, not for the
no,
lot,
so-
no.
That's kind of what I was kind of pointing to that too, because if it's really lined up right against the road, then if there was an expansion, you'd be cutting into the property next to it.
We'll confirm that. You know, the property line that the library shares with the road should allow enough for whatever road improvements they might want to put in place in their property without encroaching on the library's property. So typically, if we work within our property boundary, we should be okay, despite what they might do in the future. But it's something, you know, knowing that concern, it's something worth following up on and confirming that we're okay. So.
Can I just say, I haven't heard a lot of support for the Greenfield site. So I'm wondering, Julie, if we should even give that as an option. I mean,
I mean, I'm with you on this, especially since with our 2 letters of intent for the 2
Right.
houses there, I mean, that, and seeing that we're able to get the 90,000 square feet, and I was never really sold on the Greenfield site in the first place, as I made it clear through other discussions, but now that I've seen that we can get something closer to what we're doing here, I would be half persuaded to consider a Greenfield site much more. I am very much on board with staying in the downtown as it is, with those 2 houses added to the house we already have.
So let me just add something to that. I think there's obvious consensus moving towards the downtown site among this group who understands some of the issues right now, right?
Right.
But I think for the sake of the public process and building community support, I think we need to carry this forward a little bit and get the public to understand it the same way that we understand it right now. Because I think if we do that, the public will come to the same conclusion that we do. But it won't look like
We just
they've
force
decided
this.
what to do and they're
Yeah.
telling us this is what
I
we
like
should do.
that.
And especially now that we've initiated this idea that we are considering to. So let's present our findings
Yeah.
and open for discussion and then see if anything
Yeah.
would change,
Yeah.
which I would.
So how would you do that, Don? Would you have the open house, a public meeting, and get feedback from that?
Yes, because I think if we don't present both in a public forum, we're gonna get questions constantly about, what about the Greenfield site?
Yeah, why
Did you-
didn't
What
you
did you
do this?
consider it? Why
Right.
why did you decide? So I think it would be better to be proactive about it and kind of present both, explain, what we've discovered about both, why we think from the library's point of view, it makes sense to stay, where they are. And I think, this is frankly this is a community-driven issue, right? This is not so much an architect-driven issue.
No.
This is a community-driven issue, and so I think we can go so far, we can allay concerns about how you could fit what you need on this site, okay? What we can't do is say, based on your community values, you should put the building here, okay? You know where we stand, we express an opinion here tonight, right? But I think in the community, that opinion counts much less than what everybody else thinks about it.
We may suddenly find there is an overwhelming response from people west of here who
True.
say,
True.
we'd like you to rethink it. And I think since we have started this process, we've introduced the 2 plans, and we have
We
public
would follow
meetings
through with that.
scheduled to talk about them,
Yeah,
let's
right now.
give the public the
Yeah,
opportunity.
because if we take
And
it off
I
the
mean, if
table
that
now-
first meeting, nobody shows up who says, we want to do something west of here, then we say, all right, then we move forward, we've got a site decision made, now let's use the remaining meetings to talk about aspects of that site. But let's not just cut that off without any input from the public at this point.
And I'm sorry, what you're also saying reminds me of at the last attempt for the referendum, as I recall, there was a little bit of a site that was even further north that was looked at, somewhere around 127th, wasn't it? And part of some of the community unhappiness with that at that time was that we were, as you know, that general village plan was, Plainfield was becoming to split into, those north siders over there and these south siders over here, and it didn't help unity of community at all. It became a fighting and arguing point. And the Greenfield certainly looks like an attempt to try to keep as central as you could with open land, but I think you're right, people will want to look at it themselves too.
Yeah, that's my impression. is that
Yeah, I don't
need
think
to
we take it off
keep
the
moving
table.
forward as we've laid out, and then as soon as we have a clear decision
Yeah.
from all the stakeholders, then we narrow it down and move from there.
So I think as far as our next steps, we have some, it sounds like with regard to the Greenfield site, it doesn't make sense for us to draw much more than we've drawn so far, right? I think there's enough there to have a conversation about it. I think with respect to your existing site, we have an idea about another idea to explore, and we'll do that. And then I think the next step, in doing this, we'll continue to work with Anders as he develops the program. But I think the next step is to introduce the cost factor into this as well. And I think, there are going to be 2 ways of talking about the cost factor. We've kind of identified, ways of building on this site. It's enough very preliminary information that we can kind of take a stab at what we think this will cost, right? That's one way to approach it. The other way to approach it is, at the end of the day, you have a referendum amount that you're asking the public to support. And that number may be different than the number that we're gonna arrive at, you know, figuring out what this costs. And again, finally, this is something we think it's important to be aware of as we go through the process. The judgment on that, you know, what, is there a kind of tipping point at which it makes it much more difficult to pass a referendum? You know, we don't, that's not our expertise, it's like looking into a crystal ball. But I think it's something that as a group, we need to be aware of and try as best we can to understand what that is and how that lines up with the cost that we're showing result from this. Because if it gets to the point where there's a gap between those things, and it means that we have to reduce the building that we fit on this site, frankly, there could be some benefits from that as well, right? If we have less building on the site, we can get more parking, we can get closer to meeting your parking needs, you know, things like that. So I think, you know, the cost factor, you know, becomes an important issue to consider, you know, right at the beginning of this. So, you know, I think, you know, Graham, I don't want to speak for you, but I'm guessing, you know, we're probably at a point we can put some very preliminary numbers together.
I think we're at that point, but I don't know if we need to do all 5 options.
Right. Right.
So I think we need to be selective in which options we do. I think probably the addition to the existing is an important one, because that will give you
A baseline.
and then this one, and
Yeah, my
give you a
guess is
different
any,
answer. The
right,
underground parking gives you another answer.
right. And I think we're talking about a scheme with underground parking.
Yeah.
If we understood the value of that, so that you kind of understand the premium
Yeah.
that you're paying for the underground parking. But I think whether it's a bar building like we're showing here or an L-shaped, that's not gonna make a big difference. And
Not at
that's-
this stage,
That's
because
right.
we've got no
Right.
exterior and.
Right.
Well, and will you still be able to give a ballpark figure for the Greenfield building?
Yes.
Without
Yeah.
going into
Yes.
detail on the
Yeah.
program?
Yes,
And then when the public has questions, we'll still be able to have those breakdowns of what would be on each floor and how that would be arranged, to be able to see the difference between that and staying on
Yes.
site.
yes. And I think the big kind of mystery factor with respect to the Greenfield site and costs is utilities.
Right.
And understanding what utilities.
We haven't been able to get any utility drawings out of the city yet, so we're still trying another avenue.
Well, so in terms of comparison, then that needs to be a highlighted item because it will not be comparable. In terms of what we lift up, you know,
Yeah.
to the public, let's
Right.
say this cost is figured in here, we can't yet figure it in here.
Right.
That's the way it'll be.
And would we have
Right.
the square footage with and without that parking that's underground, just per square foot difference as
Yes.
a way
Yeah,
in
we
which?
can do both.
Yes.
We take it
Because
as an
then if
option.
we did look at a different
Yeah.
optimal size because of that funding
Yes.
issue,
Yes.
we would at least be able to have better comparisons. Good.
The square footage wouldn't change based on the
No.
parking, it would
I
be the
think
parking
she's talking
lot
about
space.
the-
Right.
With
square
or
foot
without.
cost.
Yeah.
Yes, with and without, right.
Yeah, the cost per square foot with and without, yeah.
Right. Any other comparison items?
Talk a little bit about the process of how we get down and when we need to get down to Toronto.
Yes, so, I don't know if you wanna
7:15.
talk about that a little
we've-
bit based on the schedule?
Yeah, we've got a
Thank you.
citizens task force meeting on June 11th, a public meeting on June 13th, and then we come back to the board on June 17th. At which time, the intent is to reduce it down to 2 concepts. You'll have heard from the task force, you'll have heard from the public meeting, and then we'll have new information for you before that meeting too.
Sure.
And originally, we were putting the order of magnitude costs right after that, but we can do, oh no, right before it. Yeah, right before it, so we're right on schedule.
Okay.
So all that information will be available to you on June 17th, so we can look at possibly narrowing this down to 2 and start focusing on the,
Okay.
then we can start focusing on the planning and the interior portion more.
All right.
Yeah, we've got other citizens advisory committees that.
Would follow in July.
about
Yeah,
roughly a
every
month later.
Every month we were, yeah.
A month later, we
June
go
and July.
through and the intent is mid-July that the board could be to a point where they could select a concept to go forward.
Yes, and the July board meeting is on the 15th, which is as early as it can possibly be in the month, which gives us more time afterwards to be working on further refining. We do have our two public meetings on the books. They are both on Saturday mornings. That was driven by availability of this room during summer reading and availability of the large meeting room. So those will be June 13th and July 11th at 10 a.m. And those will be open public meetings. We also will have a citizens task force. The first meeting of that citizens task force, which is our key stakeholders, we've issued invitations to all of kind of the local government entities, organizations, et cetera, to send representatives, as well as put a call out to our interested community members from community connections that we have from people from various organizations, et cetera, those who attended the open houses.
Well, the names we had put forth several months ago when we were all
Exactly.
asked to provide, okay.
So they will have their first meeting on June 11th. That will actually be held at the Plainfield Township Community Center over on Des Plaines, because there were no rooms available at the library any evening that week. So, yeah, it is what it is, and just highlights the need for more community rooms at the library. And that is, again, something that people can attend to learn more. And at the board meetings where the board is making the decisions, again, those are open to the public. So we're hoping we've put our building expansion webpage up. It's got a timeline on it. It has a feedback form on it. It's just a very quick and dirty survey monkey for open-ended questions about what people want to see and what they like. So we're hoping to get some solid public input along the way, so that as we make each of these, oh, there it is, building and expansion planning. When you're on the library's main page, it's in the quick links box over on the left. When you're actually on this page, it's not in the quick links box. There it is. Yay. And there is a specialty email list that is only about building and expansion planning, and this is where you sign up for it.
Are we putting any of these concepts up there?
Yep, we can.
You have a copy of the PDFs on that desktop.
Yay! Oh, let's go.
Yeah, no,
All right.
the more that we can show people to get commentary on, the better off we're going to be making decisions
Yeah,
moving forward.
tell us what you like, tell us what you don't
We
like.
don't need 9
Right, yeah, no.
many.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
Lots of good discoveries, I think, for all of
Good
us
start.
tonight.
Yes,
Thank you so much.
thank you.
All right, then we move on to new business.
It's old business.
This was just old business, yes.
The whole thing out, back up.
I know, it's just taking.
Yeah, that's an obligation.
Aww, taking all my buildings away. It'll be a well-traveled board.
Oh, she is.
I think she has a real hold on.
Maybe we leave it here, or you taking it away?
Oh, we'll take it. Yeah, there's nowhere to put it. All right.
All right, so, new business. Item 1, the letter of engagement from Baird, which starts on page 57 of your packet.
And
Goes for several pages thereafter.
having double-checked with some of our libraries in the area that have sold bonds of various kinds recently, and as well as other entities selling bonds, the fee quoted here is right in line with the market if you will.
Which is that percentage-based limitation.
Exactly, a percentage-based limit, and that covers all of their costs for actually doing the bond sale and all of their work with us in advance as for public finance.
Since we are only entertaining,
Well, at this time, we